I'm Betty Swann, and welcome to our show, Wisdom in the Night, where you get help for the tough decisions in your life. Tonight, I have a great guest. She is a church administrator, and she's a student, and she's crazy. And her name is Marley Davis. Now, Marley,
hi, Betty.
Why would I say you're crazy?
Because I am. I mean, growing up in a large family and working for a church and being a student and just doing all the things I've done the last few years of my life, I think that qualifies as a little bit crazy.
Yeah. So you came from a large family?
Yes. So I'm one of 9.
9?
Yes. So I'm number 7 in the line of 9 children. 2 are stepsisters, so my mom married my stepdad, and then I got 2 older sisters added to the already 2 older. So I have 4 older sisters, 2 older brothers, and 2 younger sisters.
So mainly it's girls in your family?
Yeah, and I think my mom wanted all boys, and she had a lot of girls.
Well, she's going to have to get you all married off, and then she'll get them.
And
it just takes a while.
It takes a while.
But they'll be like sons, because my son-in-law is just, he's like my son. You know, I just love him. And, And so, you know, your mom will have to wait.
Yeah.
Now, you have a really good relationship with your stepfather, don't you?
I do. It didn't start out that way, actually.
Oh, it didn't?
Much like every teenager or tween, whatever you want to call it, in that 12-year-old stage, I actually hated him, that poor man. I did not like him. I remember praying and thinking, God, my mom needs a husband, but I don't know who it's going to be or what he's going to look like. And I remember the day they were getting married, I was so upset, and I just remember crying and just thinking, God, this is not what you have for us. This is not the man that's supposed to be in my mom's life. And I'm 15 years old, 14 years old, praying this prayer like, God, no, you're wrong. And I remember God saying to me, and I don't remember how I heard it, but I just remember hearing, not every gift I give you is going to be wrapped in the shiny package that you like. And
wow.
At 15 years old, I was like, what do I do with this? And I just felt I need to go repent to my parents. And so I remember it was late at night. They were probably in bed, and I walked into their room, and I was just like, Mommy, Donald, because his name is Donald. I was like, I have to repent. I've been a horrible daughter to you guys. I've treated you horribly for so long, for the last 3 years, and you don't deserve it. And you love my mom, and you love our family, and you want to be a part of, you know, who marries a single woman with 5 kids at home, you know, like what crazy man would do that? Like so I apologized and I repented, and he said to me, it's okay, I always knew I was going to love you. And I melted, because from then on, I'm 23 now, and the last 8 years, I've had the most amazing relationship with him. Like, he really is everything that I thought I needed in a dad.
But he wasn't in a shiny package.
He wasn't in the shiny package that I thought he would come in. And I don't even actually know at 12 what that shiny package looked like, but I just knew it wasn't my stepdad at the time. And I didn't even call him stepdad. I don't call him Donald. That's his name. I call him Dad. I say my parents. My friends know him as my dad. Everyone knows him as my parents.
So he's like a real dad.
So he's like a real dad. And because he helped me understand that whole adoption process that God takes with us as children, because my stepdad chose to willingly marry my mom, who had 5 kids at home. He was done raising his kids. His 2 daughters were grown and living on their own. And he decided to willingly marry a woman with 5 kids at home and be a stepdad, knowing that he was going to be hated, knowing that he was going to be rejected probably, and he chose
knew that was going to happen?
Yeah, just because from initially their first date, I remember I walked out of the room, like I couldn't even, like we were doing a family game night, and my family's big on Rocky, the Rocky films. Have you seen them? Mm-hmm. And so we're big on those, and so Rocky Balboa had just came out, and he bought it so that we could watch it together as a family, and I was just like, he's not my family. Like, I don't want to do this. And I remember going in my room and praying and reading my Bible, like, God, what is this? Like, I'm 12 years old, and so that's why I'm probably crazy, because at 12 I was just like, God, what is this? Who is this man? Who does he think he is, that he's just interrupting our family? Like, he has no right to do this. And I started from there, and now...
But you wanted your mother to be married.
I did, and I don't understand. It's a little bit of cognitive dissonance. Like, you want something, but you don't want it the way that it is. And so you're fighting with God, thinking that it's his fault that it's the way it is, but actually it's the perfect gift that I've always wanted, and didn't know it and didn't realize it until... And now being at 23, you know, I'm just like, I could not imagine my life without him.
But Marley, your dad practiced unconditional love, didn't he?
He did.
God's kind.
God's kind of
because most people, if they don't just love God, they reject God, they run from God, they go, ooh, God, I don't want all that stuff.
Yeah.
And here is this kind, loving
So kind.
being who only wants good for you, wants to help you, wants to give you wisdom, wants to make your life go right. And you're going, yuck, I don't want you, I don't like you. And then God loves you anyway.
And he does.
Well, see, that's unconditional love. A lot of people have never experienced unconditional love. And I'll tell you how I came to experience it. I went through something, I made such a bad mistake. I would have figured anybody that wanted to get mad at me, anybody that didn't want anything to do with me, I understand. And instead, God just loved me more than ever. And that's what you're talking about your dad did, right?
He did. He did it. He's a good man. I mean, I was just talking to him today, and he's just always, how's the weather in New York? How are you doing? Are you eating? Are you okay? Do you have enough money? Like, is everything great? He taught me how to drive. He taught me how to rotate tires and change the oil. And like, he taught me everything that a dad should teach their kid. He taught me how to do it. And he was so patient with me because I was just the most stubborn kid. I would just always fight him on everything. And he was just so patient, so loving. And I always say that I'm his favorite because we went through that really tough patch.
Wow, that's great. That's really great. Now, were your other siblings, did they like him?
I actually convinced them not to like him.
Marley!
Yeah, that's why. I don't know how I did it because I was one of the youngest, and I convinced my siblings.
You're an influencer, Marley.
I guess I am. And I totally convinced my siblings to not like him, and they didn't either. They were all like, yeah, we don't like him. And I don't think any of us realized why we didn't like him. We just didn't. I remember we just were horrible kids. We used to play pranks, and we would always argue with each other whenever he came around, so they couldn't stand us arguing, and so that he would leave. But he never did. He was always super faithful and stayed, and still stays.
He gets a prize.
He's the best dad ever. Oh my gosh, I tell him that every time. I wrote him a Father's Day card last year, and I said, "You never asked to be called dad, but I choose to because you deserve it because of everything you've done." And he cried. My mom called me. He's like, "Your dad's crying right now. You made him cry." And I'm like, "It's a good cry," because usually it's a bad cry. So it was good to make him good cry.
Now, did the other kids come around and really love him too?
Yes, they do. He has a great relationship with all of us. My older sister, my biological older sister's kids all call him Pawpaw. And they like adore him. Yeah. Like they choose him over
my. Well, how could they not?
They choose him over
I don't
my
even know
mom.
the man, but how could they not?
I mean, he's amazing. Like he just exudes kindness and love and patience, and he really is just has the heart of God inside of him, and it helped me so much.
Well, speaking of God, Marley, how did you get a close, intimate walk with God? Not just know God, not just know that Jesus is the Son of God, that He came to earth and died for our sins, and that God loved us so much that He let that happen. How did you get past that into the real thing? I mean, I'm sorry, that is the real thing, but I'm talking about how did you get that and begin a walk with Him, like a daily walk?
Well, I was probably around 10, and I, for most of my life, had not realized that I was growing up in a single-parent home with 6 other siblings. And so about 10, I realized I don't have a dad. I don't know how it happened, where my brain suddenly, like the light switch clicked on. It was like, you don't have a dad. And my mom was very eloquent in saying, you do have a dad. God's your dad. And I was like, but he's not here, so that doesn't work. And so I remember just learning about God's love for children in the Bible. And it's all over the Bible. And so it was so easy for my mom to pick any scripture and tell me about it. And so then from then on, I grew up in an identity that I'm God's child. God's my father. And so when you see God not as the scary God that a lot of the world paints him, or not as the, sitting up in the clouds throwing lightning bolts at us, but actually wants to have a relationship with you. You pursue that by what you see in the Bible. And so I remember growing up reading Bible stories and just wanting to be like the Bible stories. And so I remember my favorite story was Joseph, the story in Genesis where he was a good man, but then his siblings didn't like him and they threw him into slavery, and then he ended up being, rising to the top, but always kind of falling at the same time. But his relationship with God was intact. And I always thought, how did Joseph manage to keep an intact relationship with God through all the chaos that he went through? And he read his Bible, he prayed, what in practical sense is that for me? And so I decided to read my Bible every day, and I decided to pray every day.
You still do that?
I still do. I read my Bible, try to read it 3 times a day. I'm pretty good at reading it twice a day, first when I wake up and then when I'm going to bed. I try to read it sometime in the middle of the day.
What do you read? How do you know what to read?
Well, usually I pray and ask God, what is He speaking to me, or what does He want me to read about or learn about or see differently. And so I just decided one day that I wanted to do the Old Testament in context, and because I love history. And so I bought a Greek and Hebrew study Bible and decided that I was going to go through the whole Old Testament and just read through it and just figure out what God was saying to me through the stories of the Old Testament. And so it just depends. Sometimes I feel like God's leading me some way, and some mornings I just decide I'm going to read whatever, my Bible lands on when I open it. So
I do that too. I do it that very same way. And a lot of people are more organized, they're more disciplined, and that's right for them. It's not right for me.
Yeah.
It's like prayer. Have you ever noticed how some people say they have this prayer list? Have you ever tried to do that?
I've tried, but I'm not good at it.
I'm not either, Marley. Listen, I think, okay, if that's what it's supposed to be, I mean, by day 2, day 1, I think, I can do this. Day 2, I'm like, I got to do this again.
Yeah.
And day 3 is like, I can't do this.
In the same
I
way.
mean, I just pray whatever I feel like praying. In fact, my guideline is if it's important to you, if it's important to me, it's important to God. Whether I need a parking place, I need money to go do something.
Exactly.
I want Him to help me with something or help somebody. Do you do that?
I do that. I pray all the time just for random things, like sometimes even just a seat on the subway because I'm tired.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's.
Or that you catch a cab tonight. I prayed, God, give me a cab quick.
Yes.
Do you ever do that?
Yeah, I pray that all the time. Make sure that the driver is great and wants to have a conversation, or just leaves me alone or whatever. Just pray for good seats or pray for whatever just that's going on through the day.
Yeah. Now I want to ask you kind of like about your life, Marley. I know that you are really, really smart. I know that about you, and you make great grades, don't you? And you're in college.
Yes.
What's your grade point?
I think it's like a 3.8 GPA.
3.8?
Yeah, I think
see?
so.
And yet you're really busy, Marley. You're an executive assistant. Aren't you a nanny some of the time?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, and then you're going to school. What else are you doing?
Well, I guess being an executive assistant for, in a church, that's a lot.
For how many different people?
It's like 6. Actually, it feels like 6. It's probably just 2, but
it feels like 6
people. Just because church is so busy and we're multi-site and everyone gets involved in everything, and so I'm super disciplined. I make sure that I structure my week. I actually find joy in setting aside an hour to plan my week for the whole week or even 2 weeks in advance.
How do you do that?
Well, I buy specific planners that I know I like, that I'll enjoy opening, and then once I get that, I have special colored pens that each pen represents a different type of meeting, a different type of thing, and they're all color organized, and they're all organized by time, and I spend an hour a week organizing my week just so that it's
But
set.
Marley, you're a very organized person. That is a key.
Yeah, so that's how I'm able to function. That I know exactly. I usually give myself 30-minute breaks, so I know how long I have. So I have to go to my next meeting or the next thing I have to do. Or usually, I'm very, very time-oriented and very detailed about everything that I do. So that's why I'm able to.
You know what?
Do
I don't think anybody knows that about you. So that you make it look like you flow smoothly. I had no idea you were that organized.
Yeah, it's a lot of organization that goes behind my life.
So what do you think, as an administrative assistant or an executive assistant, whatever you'd want to say, what do you think the qualities are that a person would have to do that?
Well, I think you have to be willing to enjoy people, and not just enjoy people in a work aspect where it's like you make small talk, but you actually have to be willing to know people and get to know people, because in the line of work that I work with, people produce results. We don't just get from a machine or whatever we want. And so if your people are taken care of and your people feel satisfied and your people feel loved, then they'll do jobs better, meaning that they'll want to show up and volunteer. They'll want to show up and take classes or do whatever is going on within the program or the church at that time. And so I've realized that I have to actually genuinely care about people. And my natural inclination, I guess, growing up in a large family, I tend to just not care sometimes, or it just seems like I don't care, or it's harder for me to care just because I'm so work oriented and I'm so detailed and I'm so organized that I don't gauge time to care about people. And I've just realized that I need to care about people more and not just bulldoze over them and just try to get a task done, but that they are the most important part of any job or any task, is that they're
Actually,
there.
that is a very wise thing you've just said, because people who are ultra organized, it's just like, just shut up and do what I tell you,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, I'm that way.
Yeah. Oh, you are?
I'm that way. It's bad. Yeah, I'm a little bit bad at 23 that I kind of just walk in a room and everyone's like, oh, Marley's here. And then they like take off running and go do what they're supposed to do. Yeah, it's pretty bad. I'm working on it. I've been definitely trying to be nicer and engage with people more, but it's definitely not.
Now,
easy.
Marley, I have seen you go into a situation that it was chaotic. Things blew apart, fell apart. And the next thing you know, Marley's got everybody organized and it's running, and people are able to be peaceful in their jobs out of that chaos. Now, how'd you do that?
Well, you know, it takes a lot of
Because you were hurt too.
Yeah, I was definitely hurt, and there was a lot of chaos that happened with that whole situation. But I really felt like in that moment, I asked God, I want to go home. I don't want to do this anymore, because I'm originally from North Carolina, and so I thought, well, I'll just be like everyone else. I'll just leave. There's nothing keeping me here. My family is really in North Carolina, so why stay? But in that moment, I just felt God say, you're going to go through this again. You'll never escape this situation that you're in, but you can choose to grow from it, or you can choose to get bitter from it. And you have every right to do whichever one you want, because it is a situation that has deeply impacted you. But I've not chose you to do what everyone else does. And I knew that from a young age, that God had told me that I was not going to be like everyone else around me, and I was going to be different. And so in that moment, I wanted to run. And I remember God just saying, no, you don't get to. And I threatened leaving so many times, but God was like, no, you don't get to. And so I chose to ask God, well, what do I do in this situation?
Oh,
I feel
wow.
like
So that's a piece of wisdom for people watching the show. They want out just like everybody else wanted out. And God said, no, you're going to stay. And then you said, so as long as I'm going to have to stay, what am I supposed to do? Is that right?
That's what I said. And God answered by saying, it felt like a little bit like we were planning a funeral. No one died, but the situation just felt like a funeral. And I just felt like God said, you're going to be a mom in this situation where if your husband had died from cancer, you still have kids to take care of. You don't get to stop being a mom. And that blew my mind, just because I don't naturally see myself as a nurturer of people. I love kids. I'm really great with kids, but like adults and people my age, I'm not really a nurturer to them. And so I thought, God, why are you using someone who's not wired like this to be a nurturer in this moment where there's a lot of pain and a lot of grief? And God was like, I'm growing you up. And so that's what happened. And so I just asked God, what do I do? He told me, take charge, create a system, create a structure. I'm really good at that. I'm really good at organizing. And so I came in with a proposition to organize everything and everyone, and it's been going smoothly for 2 years now, and it's awesome. It's great, and it feels like finally, after 2 years of heartache, that everyone is like fine. Everyone's okay. We're moved past the situation that kind of just went crazy and all up in our faces, and no one knew what was going on. And it feels like we're actually building and we're growing again, rather than just kind of getting by and we're on dialysis and we're needing support. But now we feel like we're growing and we're building.
All right, well, now let me ask you something. Since this is a show about wisdom, what would you advise somebody who right now watching this show goes, oh my gosh, I'm in the same situation? What would you advise them? What would, just like 3 or 4 steps? Do this, and do this. What would you say?
I would say take the time you need for yourself first.
Oh, really?
I did that. I took the time I needed. It took about a month and a half, and I left, actually. I went to North Carolina. And so I would say take the time you need for yourself, because especially if you're a leader in this situation, people are going to look to you. And you need to take the time. It may not necessarily mean leaving and actually retreating, but get in that place where you can be by yourself and just begin to think and deal and process what just happened and how you're holding on and how you're managing, and be honest with yourself. And in that process, find someone you trust enough to say, this is what I'm going through. I need you to take care of me. I need you to just listen to me. I need you to be my support system while I figure out what's going on. And then after you go through that,
That's step one.
That's step one. After you go through that, find people that are in that process with you, that went through that thing that you went through, and ask them how they're doing. Start to take care of the people.
Oh, really?
Because I've always realized you can't take care of people unless you're taking care of yourself. Like you're not giving life to a situation that you're dead inside.
You're just kind of talking.
You're just talking.
Like a talking head.
It's a talking head, and then it just produces bitterness and nothing. And so it's never good. And so then take care of the people, and then step 2 would be take care of the people, and step 3 would be build together. So if it's just going to hang out with the people that are in that situation and getting to know them better and allowing the situation to begin to no longer just keep things under the rug, but starting to
kind of like talk about it. You allow people to talk about their feelings and their
hurt, but in a setting where it's like everyone's involved. So not just the people that were hurt, but the people that have, witnessed the situation from afar, or the people that are coming in now. Just talk about it. Be open, be honest, and not hide about what happened or what you've experienced, but be truthful and say, this happened, and this is how we're going to grow from it, or this is how we're going to, handle it. And then the fourth step would be take a call to arms. Call people, rally people, get them excited again about whatever that vision, that plan, that calling, that doing, whatever you were doing, get them excited again about it, saying this is not the end because this situation happened to us, but we have a future, we can move forward. Because a lot of people tend to just stick in that moment like, oh, he hurt me and I can't ever grow from it. But really, God ultimately wants us to grow from situations. He never wants us to stay. Right. And I think part of being a Christian or not being a Christian is allowing ourselves to realize that things hurt and things mess with us and they get at us and they just rip us raw. But they don't have to define the end result of our lives. They don't have to define the fruit of our lives. They don't have to define these things. That it happened and it's a chink in our armor, and we'll look back and realize that, but it didn't destroy the entire armor, and we're not left bare. And so
Marley, you have just done such a great thing just now, because it's one thing to be identified as an executive assistant, and that's really good, and that is what you are, but you just described it. With those 4 steps, you described exactly what an executive assistant would do. And actually, I don't think I would have ever thought take some time for yourself first and regroup and figure out how you're going to think through this. I don't think anybody would normally think to do that. I think they would think, now we got to get the people together. Don't tell them everything that's going on, but rally them. But you're saying no. And Marley, is that kind of like the same way you do with your planner?
He's counting on me at the end of the day, and ultimately God's counting on me at the end of the day to be whatever I'm called to be in that moment. If I'm called to be a minister, be a minister. If I'm called to be an executive assistant, be an executive assistant. If I'm called to be a student, to be a student. But I have to be equipped before I go into that moment with myself. I don't necessarily have to have all the tools and have all the answers and have everything, but knowing that I can actually sit through it and take whatever's going on, I have to take that time beforehand. Otherwise, I'm not an asset to anyone.
Yeah, I can sure see that. Now, I want to ask you about being a student. What do you want to do with your life? Because you are 23, you said?
I'm 23.
What do you want to do with your life?
Well, what
do you think God's purpose for your life is?
Oh, that's such a loaded question. I'm not sure. I feel like because I have so many interests and there's so many different things I like, that I could end up doing anything. But I'm studying business because I really want to help the world and I want to make the world a better place. And so part of what I want to do with my life is to create organizations and companies and systems and structures that benefit people. I've seen that I can do it on this scale, living in New York City, working at a church, being a student. I've seen that I can do it on this scale. And so I thought, why not go global with it, and why not impact the world? It breaks my heart knowing that we have stuff here in America that other places in other parts of the world don't have. And then also, too, that other places in the world don't realize the riches and the value that is within them and what they have and where they're at. And so one of my friends works with a company, and she's told me that it was great doing charity and giving people things, but really, ultimately, the best thing comes from someone learning that they can do something for themselves.
Absolutely.
And so I want to do that. I want to help people realize that what they're doing and where they're at is good enough, and I want to help them grow it into something that they can be proud of, and that's something that's sustainable for wherever they're at in the world. And so that's my dream.
So now, do you want to travel internationally?
I do. I think New York City is the perfect place to start because there's so many different cultures and people and ethnicities just sitting in my neighborhood. So it's great to start here and see and dream here about people in the other parts of the world.
Okay, now if people were going to say, I'll tell you what I like about Marley, what do you think people would say about you?
I don't know, because I'm my toughest critic. So I don't know, maybe that I can get the job done. And like a little bit like I know my friends always joke that I'm a little bit of a robot or I'm a little bit of a machine because I feel no emotion and I keep going, and a little bit like Dolph Lundgren in Rocky, where he just like, if he dies, he dies. Like, I'm just kind of like, get the job done, don't cry about it, keep going. And so I think most people would say that's probably like one of my like great skill sets, but it's also one of my blind spots too. So I think it'd be something around that.
Well, you know, Marley, when you were my intern for a year and a half, 2 years there, I can just remember all the conversation we had, where you would just come in and I would feed you, first of all.
You took care of me.
And then let you talk and talk about your own life, and then we began to work. So Marley, that's really what you're saying that you figured out you need to be doing with people, right?
Yes.
Getting to let them talk, explain how they're feeling, not be judgmental, not anything. Just let them talk, right?
Yeah. I'm learning that. It's a bit of a slow learning curve for me. Usually I grasp concepts and things very quickly, but people are just different. And I realized that I have to value them more than I value what they could do for me, because I don't want people to value what I could do for them. And so when I realized that for myself, that I don't like that, I realized I can't do that with other people.
Can't do it with other people. Well, now, in your being an executive assistant, you worked for people that are a lot older than you, right? I mean, a lot.
Yeah.
Well, what was there about you that made them not care that you were young and they wanted you to help them?
I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. My boss, one of my bosses, him and I are completely opposite, and he's much older than me, but we work out so well together. Like, even though like we're opposite and he's kind of just like, oh, whatever happens, we'll go with it. And I'm like,
that's your opposite.
I'm not. I'm such like structure, plan, let's plan this. And he's like, oh, whatever happens. And I just realized like he's helping me more than I think I'm helping him. I know that he always says like, well, oh, Marley's made me a better person as far as organization, but I really feel like he's allowed me to really be able to be molded and shaped and be able to think differently and see things differently. And I think maybe that's why people, like I've been selected to be personal assistants for a lot of people, is just that they see someone who's driven but also teachable at the same time, because I actually do care. I just don't seem like I care. And so I think that's what they see, is that they see drive and an attention to detail and a sense of care.
Which they need. And that's what they're interested in. But then you're learning from them because of their different personality styles, right?
Yes.
Well, that's great. Well, I'll tell you, folks, this is a great interview. 23 years old. So all you young people watching this show, don't you listen to that thought, I'm too young for people to listen to me. It's not true at all. If you have talents and you have gifts that God has given you, and you know what you're supposed to be doing, then you can understand this. There will be people that need what you have to offer, and you don't have to be older. So open up, step out, and let God use your life now. And I want to thank you so much for tuning in tonight. It wasn't an accident that you turned on the TV tonight, and I know you received some wisdom. And I hope you have a great rest of the night, whether you're going to sleep right now or you're going to work. I'll see you next time. Bye. Hello, I'm Betty Swann, the woman who interviews people on the show. I want to tell you about something we're doing that you might want to be a part of. Feeding people with pennies and small change you find. The exchange rate makes them valuable. I saved $3.22, told my friends on social media, and they shared it. $215,000 has come in, 100% goes for food. We've fed people in 21 countries. Come help us.